We know from experience because we actually did build one before. I'll just quickly show you. Um, we built an app here called Drive Mode. Basically, it would you turned it on, and then it would automatically detect when you get in and out of the car, and it would give you all the details about the car and the vehicle. So you get like your estimate miles, estimate downtime for the driver or the worker, and it would estimate emissions and give you journey costs based on fuel card data. But it is a bit tricky to kind of get. So we sort of stopped doing that app at the moment. Um, and part of the reason was is one of the challenges is sort of like employee education on that part, or getting them into the habit of doing it in the morning, and that is one of the things that are quite difficult is for a good few weeks, I'd imagine, and it depends on the size of the team and how it's rolled out and stuff like that. Is that you would need to remind them to actually use this every day or every week whenever you want them to use it, basically. So they would need a reminder. So there is a bit of investment needed. So apps are easy to use, but there is some time needed to get people to actually use them.
It's not just that, it's also trying to convince them we're not actually distrusting them. We're just wanting to gather information from their journeys.
Yeah. So that's a huge issue as well. Privacy. So there's a couple of interesting points. We actually put on functions where they could turn certain things on and off to enhance privacy for it. You can also we also done things to like automatically cut it off at certain times so it doesn't track them personally. But that is when employees like kind of see those types of things, they do think, oh, you're tracking me and you want to like kind of force me into producing more per hour or something like that. Whereas it's much more sort of simpler and basic. That it's just basically like business. Like if you know this information, then it's easier for you to sort of predict things in the future. So we did come across that as well. It was actually a small number of people that were doing that. Most people were actually okay though. Yeah. So I think that is a part of like some trust. So I think maybe potentially showing them the dashboard as well, so they get the app, but they also get to just show them the dashboard that this is the information it generates and this is why we need it, rather than just saying just use this. Like, I'm not assuming you're doing it this way or not, but you just give it to them and say use this app now. But if you try maybe show them the dashboard and start kind of doing education on like this is the information it shows, this is the data it shows, they might be more trusting. But yeah, there's definitely trust issues in the sense that nobody wants tracked, to be honest with you. But we also need to get this data as well. I think in a lot of, I guess, and on another point in that with vehicle telematics, the little black boxes in our experience, one of the reasons drivers accepted that is drivers didn't know about it, so they didn't know it was there, which is really interesting. So they were quite surprised when it was there, and they're actually those little black boxes, to some degree, you could argue, sort of breach GDPR a little tiny bit more because it goes into like it can track like driving behavior, which is a sort of personality trait. So then you're identifying the person through their driving behaviors, potentially. So you could argue that that's actually better. But yeah, I mean, it's a whole thing with that. But yeah, I think just being like letting the people who would need to use it, letting them know you're going to use this data responsibly, and it's not about like tripping them up or just trying to spy on them or track them in that way. It's just about getting the data from the vehicles.
Right, thank you very much.
Any other questions for Paul? Any question in the chat? So if there is no further question, then I think I'm going to keep going with the webinar. So you should see my screen.
Yep, I can see it.
Okay. So I'm going to keep on going with the theme of support. And what I'm going to talk about is the support available from Scottish Engineering. So you heard from Paul, there's a lot of options here in terms of support for data recording. We've used a lot of the example about transportation and distribution, which is a scope 3 in net zero. So we look at this, the support available from Scottish Engineering. And the first thing we also look at is review the 5W and 2H's of net zero, and we start with why. And it's something we reviewed initially about 3 years ago now in 2021, and there's been a lot of change since then. As Paul mentioned, regulation moves very quickly. So we are going to be looking at that, and today we'll focus especially on the main stakeholders, which are the consumer, the customers, and the employees. So starting with the support program, then the first question is, what is net zero? And the answer is always net zero is an opportunity. But to grasp that opportunity, you need 4 key pillars, which are vision, motivation, you need the capability, and overall, you need a roadmap. And the reason you need these is because if you're missing one of those pillars, then it's not going to work. You're either going to create confusion, you're going to face resistance, you're going to generate frustration, or the whole thing is going to go to waste if you don't have a roadmap. And that's what we're looking at. So that's what we tried to figure out what net zero was, and that's how we thought net zero would be an opportunity and should be. And then we looked at a range of surveys trying to figure out what are the barriers for SMEs and businesses, what are the barriers stopping them getting on that journey. And the recognition is what SME needs is 3 things: financial support, government incentives, and tools. That's the 3 things to get on that journey. And it is almost 90% of businesses recognize that they've got any obstacles of some sort out of those 3. So it's only 11% that say they don't have an obstacle. So you can see there is a need, and that's desirability. That's the one. That's what you always start with. And then if you look at what are those top barriers, then it's about funding, insufficient return on investment, and lack of time. And we know time is money, and that's what is reflected into the need for financial support. There is a lack of policies from the governments, and that's clear, especially in terms of selecting a methodology. And that's why there is a need for government incentive. And there is a lack of data and a lack of skills and knowledge, and that's why there is a need for tools for measuring and tools for monitoring and knowledge for how you do all these. So that's what we found out that businesses needed, and that's what we use as a basis of developing our program. So when we looked at it, then the first thing was about tools, because 52% recognize that businesses recognize the need tool for measuring and monitoring emissions. So we developed a methodology, we developed a tool. We started with design thinking, as I said. You start with your key stakeholder, your consumer, your customers. You're trying to develop those 4 key pillars to grasp the opportunity, which is vision, motivation, capability, and roadmap. And through design thinking, you go to the double diamond of discover, define, develop, and deliver. And from that, we've developed, 7 steps, and we've developed that using the lean thinking technology. And the tool we use with the 5W and 2H's to be as holistic as possible and to deliver a smart roadmap. So it's specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. And we ended up with a simple 7-step process. So what we're trying to do is to demystify net zero, and it's not that complicated. So we've developed a 7-step process, with you start with your vision and ambition, where you want to be, your timing, you set up your boundaries, how you're going to measure it, and your methodology, how you resource you're going to allocate to it, and you're tracking your progress. And finally, you just share it and verify compliance. So that's a simple 7-step process. But as well as being holistic and simple, it needs to be agile. And the way this process is agile is those first 3 steps are irrelevant of the methodology you're going to use. So if you think about it, one of the barriers being, the government not deciding on which methodology they want you to use, then that's okay. You can start your journey, you can achieve the first 3 steps, and it doesn't matter what methodology you're going to use after that. Those 3 steps, the work you would have done for those 3 steps will still be valid. So that's the tool we've developed. So that's to address the need for tools. And then there is a need for data, because 39% of businesses reckon that there is a lack of knowledge on current emissions. So we developed webinars, and we had a webinar series started a few years back, as I said, the awareness series. Now we looked after that, the chapter series that we're looking at the Scottish Government chapters, there's 8 of them, and what their roadmap was at the time. We then move on to the Net Zero series, looking at standards and roadmaps and how you make a smart roadmap. And then the last series was the feedback series, as I mentioned earlier on, where we showed, where we share webinars with members that had already gone on our route and already started that journey. Some of them were advanced, some of them were the start of it, but that's what we share about. And then what we're starting today with Paul and Hypervine is that support series, and we're going to keep that going until November on a monthly basis. And here it's about businesses that are members that can support other members on starting that journey. The key thing, if you think about the process before that, is if you start the journey, you can at least tell to your customers that you are on the journey. You've got a plan, you've got a carbon reduction plan, you've got a process you're going to follow. So you may not have arrived yet, but you have started it. And we also did presentations. So presentation to specific organization like CDA or IRT, or presentation at conferences. So, and we have also done some presentation on site to businesses specifically. And we provided a range of supporting documents, and all are available on a microsite you'll find on our website, which the address is in here. So that's what we provided. So that's where you get your data. And then time is a key. Lack of time is a challenge. So what we're doing is one-to-ones with businesses, and the way we're doing it is the webinars like we're having today are specific on a given topic like the why, but they tend to be also generic because they address a range of businesses. A one-to-one addresses specific need of a business at the specific time or a specific point in their journey. And we've also developed some pilots with some members in helping them starting their journey, and how you measure things. Measuring is a challenge, as Paul mentioned. So in terms of who we're having those one-to-one with, then it's mainly members, but not only members, as you can see here. And we're having them across the UK, so as far as England, but we're covering every region. Not surprisingly, the Central Belt is big, but we're covering every region of Scotland. And interestingly, when you look at what those topics we're discussing into those one-to-ones, the biggest one is the one that we're talking about today, which is the best practice and the roadmap. That's really what people want to talk about the most about starting their journey. You find out that the finance side of things is actually quite small. You would have thought that people wanted to know how much can I save, how much can I get funded for, where are the grants, and that's actually not the most first preoccupation of businesses. The first preoccupation of businesses is how do I start, and what's the best way to start, and how do I do it without having to redo it again if regulation or standard changes or emission factor changes, as mentioned by Paul. So that's the one-to-one and the pilot we've delivered. And then there is a question about, policies and financing and the lack of information, and about funding. And there is a recognition within SMEs that they are not really confident about where you get the funding and how you get funding and support. And for that, we've developed a series of newsletters. And in there, that's where we will report funding. When is the funding available? Where can you go? So that's one you can refer to. We've done, I think, 10 newsletters by now, which includes standards funding, innovations, all sorts of information. But that's where you get the policies update, and that's where you get your funding potential updates. And then in terms of skills, because 29% recognize that one of the blockers is a lack of skills and knowledge, we've developed a course. And the course there is two of them. One is an introduction, which is a short one, looking at the overview and the 7 steps we talked about, whereas the more extended version look at each step in more details. And for each one of them, you do get a certificate at the end of it. What's of interest in here is that we like to take care of our members. So there is a heavy discount for members on both courses. And in addition to that, being members or non-members, if you've taken the first course, then the value of it would be credited when you take the second course. So that means if you take both courses, then you get the first one for free. So those are the courses we've developed. So there's a short one that gives you, if you want, an introduction, and there is a more extended one that gives you more information. And both of them carry a level of documentation, so you can download the slide, you can download the reports where the slide have been, the information on the slide have been extracted from. So that addresses skills. And in terms of knowledge, then we've also launched a library which is about 500 documents. Again, is free to your members, as long as you remember to ask for your coupon, but you get to that information. And what that information is made of is a series of documents that have been put into folders. Those folders are updated on a regular basis, and where possible, all the documentation has been dated. So you can know where is the old stuff, where is the new stuff, and you can have a range of topics that include, guidance, but general guidance as well as Scope 3 specifically, because Scope 3 is a topic that come up a lot. You also include by sectors, so you may be of different sectors you may be interested, or the different stakeholders you may be interested in, or different standards you may be interested in. So it's classified and you can get access to it. There's a lot of it. It's updated on a regular basis. I anticipate it will be updated at the same time the newsletter will be updated. But that's what we're doing. So that's what we developed. So in terms of program support, there is a need for tools, and we've developed a 7-step process for net zero. And we've also offer innovations, how to ideate. So we've developed a series of tools for that. And again, we are happy to support you in your ideation process. In terms of data, by the time this series will be finished, we'll have delivered 21 webinars with a range of information. So that's how you can get your data. In terms of time, we've got over 300 one-to-one with over 125 organizations, and we developed 2 pilots. So that's where we get a lot of our feedback and information, and how we provide a lot of support. Information, we've delivered newsletters, courses for skills, and those report for knowledge. So if you got interest, I've put my details up here. You can contact at any point in time for any one of those supports. So starting with our support and starting with our knowledge sharings, and then looking at an updated version of the 5W and 2Hs of net zero. So why 5W and 2Hs? Well, the 5W and 2Hs allows us to make it smart. Pardon me. How does it make it smart? Because the what make it specific, and the what is about reducing your emissions, while the where and the how make it measurable. That's your boundaries and your standard, your methodology. The who and the how much make it achievable. So is who in the large sense, human and financial, and how much is your resources, how much you put into it. And then you've got the why makes it relevant, And the relevance is because it adds value, stakeholder value, that is not only shareholders. And the when makes it time bound. So that's how you get smart from design thinking, lean thinking, smart. That's the idea behind it. So starting with step one, the why to make it relevant is defining your vision and ambitions. And the first question you're going to be asking yourself is who cares? Well, if you look at who cares and look at what drives changes in, people or in organizations to want to be net zero, and the first one is the consumer and the customer. That's what drives people. And the consumer is the end user, whereas the customer is who you may be supplying to if you are a B2B business. And then the other reason is the organization itself. And one of the big driver is the executive team. Another driver or lower driver are also your suppliers. But you can see about, people cares about their brand, people cares about their name. And the executive is also a consumer, and the executive is also an employee. And the other one that cares are your competitors. And why do they care? Because, as I said, net zero is an opportunity. So they see that as an opportunity, but they also care because being net zero offers better access to finance. So investors. So that's why your competitor cares. And your employee cares because they have values, as we talked about it. And employee and consumer are the same thing. And when they come to work, they don't leave their value at home. So everybody cares, the employee cares, the government cares, really cares because of regulation and because it's a source of income. So that's why they care. And it happens also that the consumer is the employee, is a voter. So that's why they care. So today we're going to be focusing on the top three stakeholders: the consumer, the customer, the employee. So the consumer, why do they care? They care because climate change. And if you look into it, then 58% think about climate change at least daily or weekly. So it is at the forefront of people's mind. They think about it all the time. 51% actually think about it a lot more than they did last year. So it's increasing in terms of predominance in people's mind. And 40% think that it's addressing the issue badly. It's not enough. It's not going far enough. So you can think about people driving for changes here. And then they worry about the next generation. So 50% are thinking about, what the consumer are thinking about, what impact is it going to have on my children, on the future generation. And 50% think that they believe or they have experienced worse conditions. So they think it's degrading because it's getting worse. And finally, 84% think that the country should do more, it should do better. So if you think the country is doing a lot already, then 84% of consumers think that they are not doing enough yet. And that's based on that survey here, the People's Climate Law, which was 75,000 people surveyed around the world. So that's a big part of people. And 49% of consumers say they are prepared to pay more, and they will pay more. But when you dig into it a bit closer, then if you look at the case of expansion, for example, then what you find out is 55% of consumers are prepared to pay more for their pensions. But if you say, well, by doing so, you'll have an impact on your lifestyle, then that drops to 29%. Then you say, well, that impact on your side is going to be financial, then that drops to 16%. So, yeah, they say they want to pay more, they are willing to pay more. But in the case of pension, that may not be true. But in the case of product, then yes, they say, yeah, I'm prepared to pay more, I will pay more, a premium 62% for products, and if they are environmentally friendly, that is. And then that goes up to 69%, even if that's going to have an impact on my lifestyle. And then even if that impact on my lifestyle is financial, that's still up 52%. So you can see in some cases they are prepared to pay more, but not in every cases. So yeah, they will pay more for it, but you need to look at it from that point, not for everything. So you need to be careful and sometimes take this with a pinch of salt. So if you look at people and people priorities, they want stronger climate commitment. They are worried about the climate and they think about it on a daily or weekly basis. And they believe that the next generation, i.e. the school, should teach more about climate change. And they feel that the government really is not addressing it properly, and the big businesses are not addressing it properly either. And they think that activists have got a strong role to play, or play a strong role in changing. They do play a strong role in changing climate change and climate ambitions. So despite all these, they still think that the biggest impactor in climate change is the government. And despite the fact that they think about it a lot, only 45% are actually seeing it as impacting their big decisions. And 49% only are prepared to pay a premium for their product. So there is the usual consumer uncertainty and ambiguity here, in what people feel and what people say they would do and what people actually do. So that's the consumer and the customer. Why is the customer wanting to be net zero? What's driving them? And what's driving them is purpose. And purpose is the ikigai of business companies. It's about what people of the planet need, and that's desirability, and that's your consumer. Feasibility is achieved with yourself and your suppliers and what they're capable of doing. And that's what the company is uniquely good at. How the company can create economic value, that's the viability. But for that, you need a customer to develop the value. And the whole thing needs a business, and that's your employee, what the company is passionate about. And if you can match those four pillars, then you've got a purpose. That's what's driving companies. And the reason you're looking at purpose is because if you look in a mirror, from 2026 to 1990, then you can see that the company with purpose have delivered a shareholder return 6 times more than companies that were explicitly driven by profit only. And if you look forward in the windscreen, through the windscreen, then you can see that people anticipate that the return for purposeful company will be much higher, 10% higher than the one that are only driven by profit. So that's the reason why. That's purpose. The customer wants purpose. And then it's the ecosystem into which the customer works. So you've got obviously the consumer expectation, which has been through, and that's driving the customer. The consumer is driving the customer. And then the customers are also expecting their supplier. So that would be you if you're supplying to a B2B, to a business which is B2C, then they will expect you to take action. And the reason for that is the easiest way for them to improve their carbon footprint is for their supplier to improve their carbon footprint. And then it's also looking at cost. And the reason for that is net zero is about how you minimize resource usage. And if you minimize resource usage, you minimize cost and you increase profit. And then you've also got opening of new market because you can develop new product that are addressing that market, the green market. So that's what you're looking at. And obviously your enhancing reputation. That's why that's the 7th step, if you remember, it's about starting that journey, telling your customer, yeah, we're on the road, we're doing things, we've got a plan. We're not just doing ad hoc bits like we change the light or we put solar panel. We are see something part of a greater strategy. So that's what you're looking at. But there is a dark side to all this, and the dark side is litigations. And what customers are looking at is decreasing their liability. And how do you minimize the risk of litigations? Because there is a trend, and the trend is to change corporate change, to drive corporate change. So it's a high level at the moment, going after the guy with the big bucks, but that's what it is, and that's where it's coming. That's the trends. And what it's looking at is a lot more than just net zero. So the activists, which remember I mentioned earlier on, are seen as being a great stakeholders, the one that actually drive change, and the consumer believe that the activists are one of the key after the government, one of the key changer. They are going after what they call emission facilitators. So that's who will, if you lend you money, will insure you, it's your pension fund, etc. So they're going further than just the corporate, and they're going further than just the greenhouse. They're looking at all the pollutant. So at the moment there is a review of the greenhouse gas protocol, and ozone depleting gas is the one which is being considered at the moment. And the biggest area they are looking at is greenwashing. So it's when you make a claim and you can't substantiate that claim. So that's again what our process is doing. When you choose your methodology, the fact that you've chosen a methodology which is recognized internationally and at arm's length, like ISO, like Greenhouse Gas Pro, like SBTi, then that gives you that level of, I would say, protection almost. But that's what you want to watch, greenwashing. And what they are going after is directors and officers. It's not only the company as a generic entity, if you want. They are looking after people. So that's another reason which is driving the customers to get to net zero. And then there is your employee, and your employee, the driver, is values. And what the expectations are with employees, so 48% says that they are prepared to leave a job where the company doesn't deliver on their promises. And 40% recognize that they don't know what the progress of the organization is. So that's one reason which would be driving people away from your business or not applying for your business. Then 70% or would change job if they felt that the organization they were into wasn't providing any learning and development opportunities. And only 45% recognize that their company offer upskilling and reskilling opportunities. So you can see there is a want to be trained and a lack of training. So another good reason to leave or apply for a position somewhere else, your social responsibility. And then 67% say they would actually apply and accept a job for where they would be working for an organization which is considered as sustainable. And 79% consider that their current organization isn't sustainable. So what you can see here is a summary of expectations and the fact that the expectations are not already being addressed. And then when you look at what is the intent and what is the actual, so they are willing to take a pay cut, a reduction in pay, it's 19%, and for the younger generation, it's 23% for a job in an organization that is perceived as being responsible, socially responsible, environmentally and socially responsible. And actually 34% have accepted a lower salary. So whereas in one hand they say they're prepared to accept almost a quarter of a pay cut for the younger generation, the average has been a quarter of a pay cut. So it's actually happening. And then 42%, as I said, the worker would accept a job if it's overly active organization doing something about it. It goes to 2/3 when you go to the younger generation. And 34% have actually accepted those job offers. They've actually done that where they've got a direct influence. So they are interested in these. So that's the employees, and the reason for that, it's the same values, as I said earlier on, the consumer and the employee, the same individual, the same values. So what's the takeaway, if you want, from step one? So why would you do it? You do it because it's the right thing to do. And that's your consumer's concern. You do it because you provide a purpose and it decreases liability, and that's your customers. And you do it because it's a unique opportunity to leave a positive legacy, and that's your employees' values. So from today, what's the takeaway? So the takeaway from our update on Scottish Engineering Support is we're here to help, right? If we're missing something, let us know, and we can look into it. We've been looking at developing that range of activities in the program, but if you think we're missing something, please do let us know. And then on the 5W and 2Hs, I would like to, the Y especially, I would like to leave you with that thought, which is we don't inherit the planet from our sister, we borrow it from our children. So that's the end of my presentation. I will open the floor to any questions you may have. I would like to thank Paul Duddy again for joining us this morning and that introduction on what softwares and apps and can do for you and how to facilitate that recording and that restrictions of data to deliver net zero. So I'm happy to take any question from the floor. Information overload. You've got the details here if you need to. No. Nothing in the chat. I don't think. Okay. So I think we can conclude this webinar. Hope to see you all next month where we carry on that journey. Suraj Services will be your co-presenters. And as I said, if you want access to the library, the documentations, again, free to members, or as you get a coupon. If you want to get on the courses, or if you want one-to-one, please do get in touch. I think you get some time back. Thank you, everybody.